pulse pressure. I'm talking about blood pressure today. I'm Chris Pickard, Director of Body Imbalance and Beat Blood Pressure. So what is pulse pressure? So this is actually following on from my video of blood pressure basics about diastolic, systolic, the three factors that actually lead to increasing blood pressure, the drugs that work on each, and alternatives as well. But what is pulse pressure? Well, the highest part of your blood pressure, let's do a little recap, right in blue here, is that your systolic blood pressure, okay? And so ideally we want that 120 or a bit less. And then your diastolic, which is the lower part, ideally that should be 80 or a bit less. Okay, and the pulse pressure is the difference between the two. So a good pulse pressure is generally thought to be 40. And if your pulse pressure is higher than 40, it's generally regarded as not a good thing and related to arterial stiffness. Now you want your arteries to actually not be stiff, because as the blood is pumped, as the heart pumps and the pressure goes up, you want the arteries to dilate a little bit and to give a little bit to actually allow the flow to continue and not be damaged, because you want arteries to be elastic and not brittle and snap. And so generally they thought, well, if it gets bigger, so basically say for instance your blood pressure becomes 130 over 70, so even though your diastolic has dropped, okay, your pulse pressure is now 60, and that's bad. However, what we're realizing is that while pulse pressure is an indicator of what might be going on in your system, the most important figure is probably, as you age anyway, it's systolic. Over the age of, I think it's over the age of 60, they found, I think systolic is the most important. Under the age of 60, you want to look at both. But what was also found is that your pulse pressure does in some way relate also to your kidney, your renal vascular resistance as well. But the actual size of the number is not as important as the ratio between your diastolic and your systolic. So to make this more apparent, we're actually going to turn it upside down. Okay, so for instance, we're going to put 80 over 120. So that basically means the ratio is 2/3. Whereas here, I'm actually going to make this different. Okay, I'm going to change that to 140. So that the pulse pressure is now 70, okay, just so the maths is far easier. But here, that is basically, if we turn it upside down to 70 over 140, that's half. And so what they found is that the ratio, the smaller the ratio was, the better it was as an indicator for your kidney health, or at least the kidney vascular resistance. And so they found, so even though the pulse pressure is higher, this number, a half, is lower than 2/3. I hope you agree with me there. And so even though the pulse pressure is bigger, the actual ratio between the diastolic and systolic is lower or bigger, depending on which way you look at it, but it's a lower number, so 2/3 to a half. And this actually is better, apparently, for your kidneys. Apparently. So there we go. So pulse pressure, again, it's another look at different aspects of what's happening. Probably it can get too low. So about 2/3 we know is probably a really good, so I think it's 0.67 it works out to ratio wise. So these are the kind of numbers you really want. Now something else as well, while I was actually doing some work on pulse pressure, came across a study that was looking at the effects of how low is it safe for your blood pressure to be. And they found in people who were treated, so we're not talking about people who this is their normal blood pressure untreated, but people who were treated and they managed to get their systolic under 130, if your diastolic got below 70, certainly below 60, it was not good. And in fact below 70 they really recommended that really want your diastolic is between 70 and 80. So if you're being treated for high blood pressure and your systolic is 130 or less, but your diastolic is under 70, certainly if it's under 60, you're being over medicated and it's causing a problem. So if you want some help then on working with blood pressure, then check out some of my other videos, check out my webinars, and there's some links in the description as well, or in the comments below. Just have a look and reach out, learn more. Be well and live long and prosper, because it's good to have a dream and hope for the future.